Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A. This is our last one for 2022, and it is December. Everybody is just getting ready for the holidays. You know, it's just a busy time of year, and I'm sure you're all busy working on Christmas projects and holiday projects, or planning on vacations, or getting the kids through the term. I know a lot of people have just been cycling through some viruses, so you're trying to keep your family well. But I am so glad that you have the time to be with me tonight. It is wonderful just seeing all the regular suspects come through the list. We see Anne, we see Gladys, Barb, Celia, Celia from New Zealand. That's pretty special. I'm always from around the world. It's just amazing. Sorry, I've just got myself trapped. Anyways, so before we go any farther, let me just find the screen here where I have these things. Just in case you're looking for a project to do, way back when I first started my YouTube channel, I had a YouTube Live fundraiser, and it was to make this holiday ornament. And this is a fast, easy, no sewing machine necessary type of ornament. And as you can see, it comes in all sorts of different sizes. It's not my normal video because it was done in a live stream method, but I hope you will have the opportunity to test that little ornament out. It's a fun little thing to do with family. If you've got a gathering, bring everybody together to make one, and it's a great way to use up your scraps. So I'm going to start off with Karen Aikenhead. She has asked, why does fabric only shrink in one direction? Why not both? Well, it does do both, but one is much less. And it's just the way the fabric is woven, and the lengthways fabrics shrink and have much less give in them than across the width of fabric. Just got to make sure I've got that right. Yeah. The width of fabric grain is a little bit stretchier. It's definitely not as stretchy as the bias, but it shrinks so much more in that other direction. And that just has to do with the way that the tension on the threads and the way that they're wound. There's so much more tension on the other ones. And that's why. Gladys has said, I just cannot seem to get metallic thread to be my friend, even when I follow the rules. Well, it's mainly because metallic is really not a thread. There's different types. There's the mylar one. There's some that there's a lot of polyester and other things involved. Like some of them are wrapped. Sometimes the metallic is woven through the yarn, and they're just not a typical yarn. So it's a different type of rules to play with them. And unfortunately, I can't go into much more detail about it now. I'm hoping next year, as I use my embroidery machine a little bit more, I can go into that a little bit more detail. But I have definitely found that using an extra step, like an extra bend in the tension thing, like we normally have our spool just sitting on top of the sewing machine and then it goes through and feeds through. I find if I have it on a spool collector, I had that spool dispenser on my Christmas gifts list, just having it go through one more thing can often help just keep that the flow on your thread a little bit better, as well as using nets. But I'm sure you've tried those. I know you're an experienced sewer. They are just not friendly. I have decided that when they say specialty threads is just another way of saying difficult. Fussy and difficult. Sue Lynn Earl. How do you keep track of your quilty life in general? Do you journal? I did journal a lot a couple of years ago. Through COVID, life just changed and the way I thought about things changed. I found a computer app. It's an app, not a phone app, called Melanote. That's Milanote. And I found it had a lot of features just for me to keep track of everything that was going on. So I keep track of my YouTube schedules in there. I keep track of any ideas I have. I just kind of dump them in, and there's a place for them to belong. But I have been struggling just recently. I think since I got back from Holland, I'm not quite sure what the reason is. Probably 5 or 6 different reasons just colliding together. But I am finding that I need to change things again. So I am going back to my bullet journal, and just because I think I need to invest a little bit of time at the beginning of the day and the end of the day just to review where I am. I've just found myself a little bit scatterbrained. I can be distracted by anything. I'm diligently unsubscribing from things, and I'll get a text message. I'll go to do something on my phone and I'll look at a message and be distracted, like right now. I look at my phone and I see something and I'll forget what I'm doing. So I just need a little bit more clear. I need to subtract. I need to remove things, and bullet journaling is now coming back to be part of that. I don't go do the full bullet journal. I don't do the whole, the monthly spreads and the weekly spreads and the yearly spreads. I tend to look at things just on a weekly basis, and Melanote, my online thing, will be looking after the bigger picture stuff. So it's funny. Nowadays, we just need to figure out that balance, right? It used to be all analog, and you just can't put it all on a computer. You need a little bit of analog. You need a little bit of writing, but where's that balance? Where's that balance between your computer and your phone and writing down and keeping everything straight? Yeah, I don't think there's a magic solution, and I don't think there's a magic solution that will last forever. So I think you've always got to be ready for life's little bumps and adjusting as things go along. I am looking at the list and I'm seeing a couple of other friends that I recognize. I see Lynn from California, and of course John from Art East, Jay McNabb, Paula Applegate, Sue Hale from Canberra, Australia. That's Angie Wilson's old territory. Gotta stop saying that as I look at questions, don't I? Have you used a starching pen? Just bought the Clover brand and you find it's a game changer for flat finger pressing. I just got a nice little care package from Acorn, and I know John, who I just mentioned, swears by it. I know that there's a couple of other people that swear by it. So I'm going to be taking it for a test drive in the new year. And seeing if I can see that results. Shelley, if you saw my interview, sent me one of her squares here. This is just so perfectly pieced. I'm not sure if you can just see how, but if you saw my interview with Shelley Scott Tobish, you know she's a precision quilter, and I find this very inspiring. I just want to keep it beside me all the time and just inspire me to keep going, trying to keep my points straight. Yeah. Oh, we've got a couple of other people that like Acorn products. There's Maureen. Any tips on sewing standing up? Diane has asked. I have sewn standing up a couple of times. I think the main thing for whether you're sitting down or you're standing up, we need to remember to keep everything strong through our hips and through our torso. Posture is everything, and posture is everything when you're standing up, and you make sure that you do not curve your back. We have a tendency to stick our stomachs out when we're using our using our feet. The other thing is to keep your shoulders down. It's the truth. Keep your elbows in, your shoulders down, and just let everything hang. Don't, because that causes that creep up there and gives us the neck issues and the shoulder issues. So I think also when you're standing, always when you're standing, you should be keeping one foot slightly front of the other, and that can help you distribute your weight a little bit better. So you may have to fiddle with your foot pedal so that you can get that good posture. Roxy Wood, now that's a nice name. What should I say to folks who ask me to make them a quilt and they offer to pay? I don't want to be rude. I just don't sell quilts or anything I've sewn. Well, you can simply say, that's something I don't do. Another thing you can say is that, I'm sorry, I'm booked up for the next 3 years. And that's not necessarily untrue. You have your own projects and what you want to do. The other thing you can do is give them a price, which is quite worthy of your time, in the thousands. You know, definitely that's usually enough shock value. A lot of people are expecting to pay like $60 or $200 or something, and they don't realize that's not even going to pay for the materials. So part of that is just giving people a reality check. Are you prepared to pay $1,500? Are you prepared to wait 2 years? That can usually solve the problem for people. So, yeah, that's how I would turn them off with the reality of it, and then say, that's just something I don't do. You could also have a little chat with them about the amount of time it takes, the reality of how much. People just do not know how long it takes to make a quilt. I did a baby quilt the other day. We're talking a panel, so there was no piecing involved whatsoever, and just loading it on the long arm, cutting the binding, putting that on, something that should have, in your mind, you're thinking, well, that's just going to take me an hour. You know, you clock it up and it takes 3. Yeah. Margaret Kent, do you feel guilty having so much fabric and supplies? No, I don't. I have kept it down. I do not feel I'm at that spot of overcapacity. I do not have fabric that's hiding in a garage. I don't have fabric that's hiding in a storage locker. I am what you can describe as a binge shopper. I keep my wallet shut until it's open, and then it goes. And I just have to watch those occasions. Sometimes I do it online. I almost always do it in person. I just recently took a 8-week class at a fabric store, and it was very hard every day to walk out with nothing. And when I finally did open my wallet, I bought all the fabrics for a quilt for a nephew. I bought some other fabrics that were kind of impulsive, a couple of tools and things like that. But I also try to consume a lot as well, but there's a limit to how much you can consume. So it's finding that balance. And my excess, the things that I don't want, I don't throw in the garbage. I push them on to somebody that needs them. I personally am lucky. I belong to the Toronto Modern Guild, and at the end of the month, we are having the end of January, we are having a garage sale. So it's worth joining the Toronto Modern Guild just so you can attend the garage sale. And that's where we take all our excess as we go through the Declutter Challenge. That's where all my excess stuff will go. And you just evolve as well, like things that you needed last year. The trick is to make sure the things that you don't need this year, get out your door. So if you don't know, we are having the Declutter Challenge again. It is starting on January 1st. I sent an email out last week to everyone in my newsletter. And all you need to do is go to the homepage on my website and sign up. You're not doing anything yet. We have a Facebook group, and that will open, I think we're opening it the day before Christmas, just so we can go on holiday and it's opened and we don't need to worry about opening it. But that's when things will begin to. There'll be a couple of emails that go out about how to begin, like what do you need to do to prepare, and then we start on January 1st. This year we're lucky. January 1st is a Sunday, so our weeks are going to start and end on the weekend. So nice and easy this year. Yes, I'm reading Carol saying people who don't do arts and crafts have no idea of the time involved. Yeah. Now, one thing that you should not feel guilty about is if people give you fabric. If people give you fabric or you win fabric in a contest or something like that, and that is not to your taste, do not feel obligated that you have to keep that. That can be sent on to someone else that is deserving of it. So, in fact, try to get it out the door as fast as possible. Jean, I believe it's Bolero. I should actually zoom in here so I can see these things. Is May a nice time of the year to visit Toronto? My husband and I are planning a trip. Yes, it's not a bad time to visit Toronto. Winter usually leaves in April, and May is a pretty hopeful, optimistic time. So, yeah, tulips will be out. Very pretty. And there's plenty of things to see. So there's the fabric store videos. My one on fabric stores east should be coming out very, I think tomorrow morning. And there's textile museums, and of course you can go to the ROM, and we have the Aga Khan museum as well. We have a number of settler museums like Black Creek Pioneer Village and the Spadina House, so lots of textiles to see as well. Marlene Selmanak says, I have a question. She's a new long armor. Do you have recommendations for rulers? I have rulers for my sewing machine that I have not tried. So my policy on rulers is to acquire them as you need them, because they will come into your life very quickly. And you'll find that there are, it's about your hand size and how you like to manipulate them. And I have fairly large hands, so the rulers that I will be comfortable with are different than people who have small hands. And I had Kelly from Silly Moon Quilting on Karen's Quilt Circle a couple of months ago, and she has lots of rulers that she has developed as she has learned to quilt, and based on the desire of people. And she's got not thousands, but a lot of videos to back them up. So she's quite adamant about teaching people how to use those rulers as well as selling them. And I think that's the real key. You've got if you're brand new long armor, you're going to figure out what's easy and what's not easy. Quilting with a straight ruler is a lot harder than people think, and it's a practice game. So you can decide what you want to do. Like, are you wanting to make circles? Are you wanting to use straight lines? The real key is practicing. And it's hard because it's a lot more effort to get a practice piece on the long arm than it is on a sewing machine. But practice is key. And I've just got a new quilt on the long arm today, and it's just amazing how your skills build over 2 years. Yeah, you'll be looking back at this time and just you'll get better very quickly. Pamela Blesk has asked, good evening from Illinois. Question, is your thread basket for convenience or do you do something with thread scraps? My thread basket is for convenience. There is a lot of people that do things with their thread. They will use Solvay, which is like an interfacing weight material that dissolves in water, and they'll just sew the heck out of that thing. They take the threads and they make art, and they make scarves, and they make bowls, and they do all sorts of amazing things with the thread pieces. Meredith Woolnough, that was on my Karen's Quilt Circle the other week, who does that sculptural embroidery with thread, she just collects them in clear glass jars, and they just form this stratigraphy of color as she's working through projects, and she just keeps them. She uses them as decoration. So there's other people that take those threads and they stuff them into pillowcases and use them as dog beds. So lots of different choices. But for me, my thread scraps go in the garbage. Valerie Lapointe has said, first time using wide back fabric. I was told that I had to pre-wash it before using. Is that correct? I usually only pre-wash the backing if the quilt top fabric was pre-washed. The reason why they're saying pre-wash it is because it's a bigger weave than quilting cotton. So it's going to shrink at a different rate than your quilt top. I will pre-shrink my flannel backs, my flannel wide backs, but I don't pre-shrink my sateen ones. If you've got a Tula pink one, those are all cotton sateens. I've never done one of those. And it just depends on the quilt top whether I pre-shrink the other ones. So like the quilt top that I have right now is all done with pre-washed fabrics. It's a real scrappy old quilt. So I pre-wash the back for that. But I've done many that I haven't. So it's your choice. But it is a wider weave and it will shrink more than regular quilting cottons. Cynthia has said, Cynthia Zunbrun, do you have a video on how to use a walking foot? And is the walking foot the best way to sew minky fabric? I'm struggling. Valerie's here, and I think, Valerie, you said that you had sewn with minky one time in Karen's Quilt Crew. I have never sewn with minky fabric, but I have used a walking foot, and a walking foot doesn't take much. All you need to do is load it onto your machine. It just does the work. So what it does is you've got 3 layers of fabric. You've got your top, you've got your batting, and you've got your backing. And under a regular foot, with all that pressure, they end up sliding against each other, and they end up going through the machine at a different rate, so that the one on top begins to pucker and fold over. So what the walking foot does is it puts less pressure and it helps feed the fabric underneath at a different rate. So they all go through mostly together. So I always use a walking foot when I am doing straight line quilting on my home machine, but I also use it when I'm doing binding. And there's a couple of other places where I use it. Anytime I'm finding that the layers are not going together properly, I will put on the walking foot. Jess Arena has asked, what is the best resource to learn how to pick fabrics? Well, I have a color series on how to do that. It is a skill that you will acquire over time. I think every experienced quilter in this chat will agree that quilting cotton and patterns are tricky. Not only do you have to worry about color and how to work with various colors coming together, you also have the added issue of pattern. And sometimes there's a problem with the theme of the patterns not matching, and sometimes you don't have enough contrast and different things like that. So start with color, and within color, start with value. So it goes value, color, the saturation, and then start working on your patterns. And that's often why I think a lot of people default to working with solid fabrics, is because the pattern is just one issue too many. And you can also look to like fat quarter bundles, and that has made it a lot easier to mix and match fabrics because the designer has often done all the hard work for you already. They've given you a variety of patterns, the big, small, and medium. They've given you a variety of saturations, and they have chosen the color harmony. So you don't necessarily have to buy the fat quarter bundles. The fat quarter bundles can just lead you in the right direction. Dawn Bernhard has asked. Bernhard? Is it Bernred? I apologize. Can you just use water instead of starch or sizing to get pre-cuts to shrink before sewing? Okay, so the whole shrinking pre-cuts. First of all, you do not need to wash fabrics when you purchase them. You can just simply get them wet and they will shrink. Most of them are not dirty. Maybe the outside one would be dirty, but the inside ones are not dirty. Unless you have a fragrance issue or something, then you need to add the soap to remove those. But in general, it's just shrinking. But when you shrink pre-cuts, they also may no longer, they may shrink too much so that you can't use the pattern that goes with the pre-cuts. So you always have to weigh that. The best way to wash pre-cuts is just by getting them damp. You can spritz them with water, or you can put them in water and then lie them out on towels or old sheets or whatever, and just let them air dry. You don't want them to tumble. You don't want them to be scrunched. You don't want them to spin. You just want them to lie flat and shrink. And that is the best way. Now, there's a couple of problems with pre-shrinking besides the issue of they're now no longer going to be large enough for many patterns. They also, some of them are not cut well. They are very off grain. And if you're just sewing them normally, that's usually not an issue. But when they shrink, they will shrink out of square. This is really problematic for things like jelly rolls, where you're only dealing with 2.5 inches, and they can really go terribly wonky on you. But I've seen it happen with layer cakes and charm packs too. So I don't think they were ever designed to be washed. I know people want to do it. If you are wanting, if you've got a problem with your hands that you cannot cut them, like it's sore and things like that, you might take a look at a Cricut machine to get that accurate cutting for you without the effort through your hands. That's another. You can just learn to cut well if it's not an arthritis issue. Catherine Elpa has asked, how's everyone in my family in Mando? It has been 2 years since Cameron was given his all clear. And we are, has it been 2 years? 1 year since his all clear, and 2 years since his final chemo, and he is doing very well. Thank you very much. My daughter's moved to Montreal. My number 3 has moved to Squamish, and my youngest is with us. And of course, we have Mando. And as we watch him tear around, we realized last year at this time he had a broken leg. So, yeah, so everyone's well, including my husband. And my husband and I are already excited about going to Panama, and my parents are coming with me, so we're excited about that too. And yeah, all's good. All's good. Lynn, I want to thank you for that cup of coffee again. Thank you, and I hope you are doing well. Charlene Rainville, can you give us preview hints about what Declutter Challenge 2023? How is it similar or different from 2022? Well, it's going to be very similar to what it was in 2022, but as you go through everything, your answers to your decluttering questions are going to be different. Your life changes, your skill changes, your space changes. I can't believe how many people wrote to me saying that they've moved this year or they've had to move into another room this year. So, our bodies change, you know, our eyes get worse, our hands get sore, different things happen. So you answer the questions differently. And if you watched it last year from the previous year, I even answered questions differently. And I was able to let go of some fabric that I no longer wanted. And really taking a look at your space and thinking about how you use it. Now, I do have some overarching questions that are going to be different this year, but you'll find out more about them as we get closer. Yeah. Lynn Shames has asked, what's the best way to store layer cakes and jelly rolls? Where you can see them, because if they're out of sight, they're out of mind. So I'm not quite sure where you are. I store my layer cakes flat so that they don't get out of shape. My jelly rolls, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I actually have 3. I said I was never, ever, ever again going to have jelly rolls, and I have 3. And I have a layer cake. My absolute shape I hate the most is the layer cake. And I have a layer cake. It was a line of fabric that I loved. I kept looking at it every single store I went into. It was like a magnet that pulled me across the room. And finally I said, I have to buy something in this set. Otherwise, it's just going to drive me bonkers. So I bought a layer cake. Kathy has asked, do you know of any tools to help coordinate print fabrics in a quilt? Or is it just personal preference? I'm not quite sure what you're specifically asking for, but I have a video called 5 fabric exercises, and you should take a look at that because these are the questions that you need to start asking as you're moving your fabrics together. There's also another video of, what is it? I think it's Too Afraid to Cut or something. Mistakes that you make that stop you from cutting, right? These are decisions that you've got to make about your fabric. And one of the easiest ways to help you choose what fabric is suitable where for print size is just cutting templates of the finished size of the blocks. I've shown myself doing that a number of times. I just use cereal boxes. I just cut out from there, and I'll cut it if it's the 3 shapes. You've got triangles, rectangles, and squares, and I just have a whole template. They just grow as different blocks grow, and I'll take every one for a test drive because it's absolutely incredible how fabric changes when it gets down to that small size. I've been caught surprised so many times. You know, you buy this fabric that's so beautiful on the bolt, and it totally loses all its character when it gets down to a 1-inch size. Or it can change its value. I have a couple of prints where that surprised me, where I thought it was a dark print, but when I fussy cut the motif, it actually became very light in value. So templates, just use those templates. Now, I know I showed it in 10 sewing hacks with templates. I know it's in that one, but I'm pretty sure I showed it in at least 2 others too. Yeah. What are my favorite scissors? My favorite scissors are my new 9-inch lightweight scissors from LDH. I've had a set of their midnight ones, which I've really liked, and I've had a set of serrated Kais, which I bought at QuiltCon many years ago. I still like the serrated ones, but my favorite ones right at the moment are these big, lightweight ones. I just find them so much easier to use in my hand with that lighter weight. Teresa, Dumfries, Scotland. Is that near Dumfries? Because my family's from Dumfries many, many, many generations ago. Do you ever use a different colored thread on the back of the quilt than the front? All the time. All the time. It is very, very rare that I use the same color on the front and the back. And I think I'll probably make a video about my experience with choosing threads on quilts, because it's a very interesting journey that I've been on with threads and long arming and quilting. My rule is always, before I make my final decision, is to start pulling out threads that I would never, ever use. Like my brain is just saying, absolutely not. And it's not that I choose them, but they lead me off in a direction of where I usually end up. Like right now I'm quilting a blue quilt, but the thread color is purple. There's no purple in the quilt, but I'm using a purple thread. I had somebody here on the weekend and we were going through it, and it was absolutely fascinating. She was working on a white half square. One half of the square, the block was white, and the other half was batiks, and they were all dark colors. And she ended up using pink. Pink was the right color to show up, but trying to find that right value within it. Yeah. Linda Burton has asked, when using a walking foot, do you also reduce the foot pressure? No. Now, on my Bernina 790 and 750, I can adjust the foot pressure, but on my old one, my old 910, which is, God, I hate to say it, is now over 40 years old, I can't adjust it at all. So the walking foot on that older machine is very, very good. Susie So says, should I wash fleece before using it as a backing? Well, fleece normally, it depends on the fleece. Like if it's a cotton or is it a polyester? Because a polyester is not going to shrink. Excuse me. I wouldn't if it's brand new and it's good quality. If you can see if you haven't pre-washed the top, I wouldn't necessarily. The only time I pre-wash the back, when I pre-wash the top, is with a flannel or a linen, and it just has to do with the bigger weave. So, but other people may have an opinion. So you can always take a square and wash it and see how much it shrinks. But also wash the top and see how much that shrinks too. And what you're just trying is not to have a big difference between the shrinkage on the front and the shrinkage on the back. Linda Burton has asked, what is LDH thread? And it's not a thread as in a thread that you use on the sewing machine. It's a thread as in a thread of conversation in the chat. Susie Sows has asked, oh, that's the one. Family DeVries has asked, what does it involve to be a Bernina ambassador? So a Bernina ambassador is, well, an honor to be chosen. They approached me, and obviously I use a Bernina machine, so that's what they're looking for, somebody who advocates for the brand. And I was a Bernina person, and I was quite committed to the brand to begin with because I just absolutely love my machine and always have. So now I'm a Bernina ambassador. Now I really don't need to do much differently than I did before because I already have a machine and you've seen me use it in my videos every single month. So that's really, that's the main thing. I just have to show content with my Bernina machine in it. You see a badge with Bernina on the wall. And I will probably be at a couple of events this year. I may be at the Bernina booth at Quilt Canada. I'll stop by the Bernina booth at QuiltCon, though I'm a Canadian ambassador. I'm not a US ambassador. And it's basically about exchanging content, information, and knowledge to people. So as an ambassador, I do have, and if you're a Canadian and you're looking for a Bernina machine, I do have a coupon I can give you, a mail-in rebate, but it's only valid in Canada because I'm a Canadian ambassador. And it has to be used within 30 days of me giving it to you. So there's that. Yeah, and they're teaching me how to use my machine better as well. So there's a lot of benefit to me. Yeah. The Empty Nester Quilter. Question: what is the best practice for understanding quilt patterns? Well, quilt patterns are tricky because there's no standard format in the quilting world, and there's many different brains that process information many different ways. So the best way is to go through it and, well, for me, in my logical brain, the best thing for me is to go through it and divide it up into sections. Like, this is where we cut, this is where we sew, this is how we put it all together. Now that I've evolved a little bit farther, I have to watch myself because I presume I know how it goes together. And there's a person here who I will not mention who has made a beautiful quilt, and I keep making mistakes because I don't follow his directions. I look at the picture and think I know what to do, and I have to read the fine print. So, that's the trick that you have to. Before you start, you should understand what's going on. I say that before you start, you should know what's going on. But I know quilters that don't understand what goes on, and then they go off in a totally different direction, and they still have a lot of fun. So it comes back to, what are you trying to get out of the quilt pattern, and where do you enjoy working, and what works for you, and try and tilt that information in the quilt pattern to how you work. For instance, I don't need to look up anymore on the measurements of the half square triangle because I know how to make a half square triangle. I know what size of blocks they need to be for a half square triangle. But another person may need to have that measurement every single time. Some people may want more direction on a lot of quilt patterns have a coloring page, and that might be a part of the quilt that the process that you really enjoy, and you want to sit down and play with color, or you go to an app like Pre-Quilt and color it your way. And yeah, so it's a real balance of understanding how you like to work and tilting that information to you. And unfortunately, some quilt patterns are not perfect. And it's really important for you to go to a home page and take a look at that. It's usually under errata. And just find those mistakes, or just check and see whether there's any mistakes for anything that doesn't sound right to you. I know that's as clear as mud. I'm sorry. But there's just so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to do it. But for me, I like to go through and understand, okay, so this is where the cutting information is, this is where the block building information is, and this is where the assembly information is. And for me personally, I will read the instructions and then I will go do it my way. I rearrange things. I'm making a beautiful quilt right now where she had you cut everything to begin with and then assemble them into strips and then cut up the strips and whatever. And I'm doing it as a row by row. I've totally changed how I'm doing it because I don't have the same fabric to begin with that she has. She asked for 5 fabrics. I'm working with 18. So I'm just doing it a different way. So I just think it's important for you to work the way that feeds your bucket. And okay, we're at the 45-minute mark, so I think I have time for 2 more questions. Del Marie has asked, do you have a problem with the back thread color showing on the front? That is something that you solve in a test piece, a practice piece. You're wanting those threads to meet right in the middle, and you can often solve that by using a lighter weight thread on the back than on the front. So it seats nicely in the fabric and it doesn't pop up quite so much. And yeah, you just want to do a couple of tension pieces. And I know fiddling with tension is a nasty part of the job. I absolutely hate it. I had to do it today. I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I had to change my needle and try it again and try it again and try it again. And now it looks good, but it was not the first try out of the gate. And I'm using a brown on the back. I'm using a light purple on the front, and exactly that problem. It was that brown was just peeking through and just finding that magic tension that goes through the back. But play. The more you play with your tension knob, the less afraid you will be of it. Jen K. Sorry, I'm reading this. She has 8 kids and newborn twins, and she'd like to have 10 to 25 minutes a day for sanity. Any easy to start and stop quilt patterns that you'd recommend? Well, I would recommend starting with maybe Stash Buster number 1. That's a very easy one to start and stop with. I personally like to make some scrappy blocks. I'll use my scrappy strips and then put them together, but keep it simple. You don't want to be necessarily making a quilt that has 25 different blocks in it. Try and have it so that maybe you're working with 2 or 3 different types of blocks that you can sew together. Therefore, when you have a moment of sanity, you can just jump into it. You know what you're doing. You don't need a lot of brain space. You don't need to switch as many gears. I know it must be so hard just to find that time, but then being able to actually do it is also hard. Keep it simple. Keep it so if it's in a style that you can combine them together anyway. So if the quilt is getting tedious or the project is no longer feeding you and giving you energy back, you can just quickly make it into a quilt and then move on to a different design. Try and use colors that you love, because being around colors that you love, you'll find a real benefit to that. Try to stay away from those ones that you don't like. I know you possibly are thinking, I'm making 8 quilts. I have 8 children. I'm making a quilt for every child. You will be making them so many quilts as they get older and throughout their lifetime. You don't need to rush to make quilts for them right now. do quilts that feed you. That's what you're looking for in your practice. And you deserve it. You deserve it. 8 children with newborn twins. That's a lot. That's a lot. So I'll be thinking of you. Do I have a planned series on English paper piecing? I've already done an intro video on English paper piecing, so no, I do not have another video planned for English paper piecing. I do have one for just paper piecing and doing large-scale paper piecing in the new year, but I do not have another one coming on English paper piecing at the moment. Dory Mulder has asked, how can I hang a round quilt? I have a video. I think it was in my second dollar store. What I would do is I would have Velcro strips, insert a couple of Velcro strips around the edge, and then use command strips on the wall. That's what I would do. And then you can do multiple of them for you to get the shape that you want on the wall. I have a couple of awkward size quilts that I have on the wall, and that's exactly what I've done. I put them along the ridge, put them out at the point, and then this point would pop up. So I didn't put it down at the very bottom. I put it a little bit higher so that there was still a little bit of flow in the quilt. Yeah. So let me just have, I think I've got a couple of announcements here. If you haven't seen it already, I think my last video was gift guide for quilters. I know we talked about a couple of them here. Just something that I have here that I've been working on. I am a favorite person right at the moment in my family and friends. I walk around with this. This is on the gift guide. This is a clover, I think it's called a quilt dome, and it just holds 10 needles. But if you remember my other video on magic threads, I have this preloaded with the conductive thread and with all my friends. And I can do it outside in a couple of seconds with my dog walking friends. I am just putting a little X on the end of the tip. Now make sure you figure out where they actually use it on their glove. And the trick is to make a cross and make sure that the thread goes in the back. And that means when you're outside that your thumb can actually make things go by. Not your thumb, the finger with the cross on it will actually make them go by. So the link to this is in the gift guide. Now, I'm not sure if you saw that, but my new YouTube setup, you know, I've got my new background and everything. And this is how I got there. And then on Karen's Quilt Circle, I had Dr. Jacqueline Adams, and we were talking about the arparellas of Chile way back in the 1970s. It's terribly the talk of life under a dictator and how it happens, unfortunately, is very apropos of today. We take our democracy for granted. We take our freedoms for granted. We think they're easy, but they're harder, and unfortunately, it can change fairly quickly. And then, of course, I had Meredith Woolnough talking about sculptural embroidery. If you missed it, we had a Q&A on the Panama Canal cruise. If you haven't heard about it, you've been living under a rock, because I've had it on everything. We are going to Panama in April and May, and I'm going with Gnome Angel, Angie from Gnome Angel. I mentioned it earlier. We've got the Declutter Challenge coming in January, so head over to my website and just register. And the next Q&A is going to be on January 3rd. Some of you will still have kids at home at that point. Some of you will be back to work, but we are going to start our new year on January 3rd. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. It has been a lovely seeing all this conversation happening. I love how you guys all know each other now. I'm just providing the chat room for all of you to talk. But thank you. Oh, I see Kelly's here from Silly Moon. Corrine. Deb, Joyce. Joyce, I'm sorry you missed the Karen's Quilt Crew the other day, but thank you for showing up for the Q&A. Anyways, everyone have a safe and happy holiday. Enjoy your family, enjoy your trips, enjoy your vacation, and I will see you in the new year. So take care.